Hello, friends, and welcome to Worldbuild with Us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty, and I'm here with my co-hosts Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. On today's episode, a new patron and a new prompt at the same time. But before we get into that, remember that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com. Click on the link, follow the instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we'll be building your world. And of course, if you want to follow us on social media, we are over on Twitter at Let's World Build. If you want to come join our Discord and chat about the worlds you want built, or the worlds you've already built, or anime, or anything else, click on the link in the description of this episode for that. And if you, like our new patron Alex, want to give us money for whatever reason, if you're feeling particularly generous, you can click on the Patreon link in this episode and just do that. You get all sorts of cool stuff, including a 2-part episode, which Alex is taking advantage of. So on to that prompt, now that the shilling's out of the way. New patron, new prompt. The prompt is, we're still on Earth, mostly. Something we've yet to determine decided to play around with our planet like it was a computer game. Tenet 1. Never before seen, seemingly brand new swaths of terrain have been copy-pasted at random across the planet. Tenet 2. There are portals leading to other dimensions from which all matter of beasts and monsters can come through. And finally, number 3. Full magic has returned. It does not mesh well with tech. So, very fun first time Tenet for our new patron, Alex. Again, a huge thank you to Alex. We very much appreciate it. I always want to say as well, of course, you don't have to be a patron to give us a prompt, but you get the full double episode experience, which does help. Anyway, with all that out of the way, we finally get into the nitty-gritty. I'm excited about this world. I've got some interesting ideas already. So, Daniel, why don't you kick us off? Start us off with your Tenet, sir. What have you got for us?
Would you like me to situate the setting, or would you like me to talk about magic?
Ooh, you know what? I'm going to say magic. I want to hear...
Magic sounds fun.
Yeah. Do you believe in magic, Daniel?
As a person?
It's a song.
Oh,
never mind. Yeah,
my music began in 1998. Remember?
Well, this song was from the 60s, so I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I don't listen to stuff prior to garbage version 2.0. Yeah.
Okay, whatever. Get down to your Tenet, Daniel. What's the magic all about?
My Tenet, so he said something about magic returning, and this is set on Earth. My Tenet is magic is tapped into via technology or the internet.
Interesting.
How does that play exactly with the Tenet that says that it doesn't like technology? Is it because that
it doesn't mesh well?
With technology? Yeah. Very curious.
I don't know, but what I'm thinking, the way you interface with magic is you have to actually use technology to do it.
Wow. Oh, okay. So maybe it's like a matter of like power conduits, essentially. So it's like, this is like the only way that we know how to use magic is through technology, but it's a poor conductor of magic or something like that.
Yeah.
Or poor conversion.
Like it's prone to like messing up or prone to chaos or something.
I can support that.
I'm also thinking like it's hackers, are magicians because they know how to interface with technology, or maybe the way to model interfacing with it. The best way we know to do that is like through programming or through technological interfaces. That's what I'm thinking.
Interesting.
So we got nerd magicians running around programming stuff.
I mean, that's a redundant statement, Courtney, but so I was thinking more like when you say white mage, black mage, that they're literally white hat and black hat, like hackers / magicians, then something like that.
This actually flows in well to one of my tenets, which is that the humans on Earth have been implanted with devices that allow for like tracking their stats essentially, and each device has a randomized chance of granting its human magical powers.
Oh no! So we're literally we're going into an isekai here, and neither of you know what that is really, and I'm very excited about this already. But that's dope. I really appreciate that.
Could you explain it for our listeners?
No, fuck you. If you don't know what an isekai is, Google it. No, I'm kidding. An isekai is a subtype of anime, which is basically a character becomes stuck in another world, whether through magic or portals or some technological mishap. And oftentimes what this plays out as in anime is I'm stuck in an MMORPG, a very famous one is Sword Art Online. It sucks, by the way. Don't watch it. But in SAO, this character is like the best, like he's the best at what he does in this video game. And at a certain point, and like everyone's kind of in these immersive suits, and then they can't get out of the suits for whatever reason. There's like this big technological breakdown. So everyone's stuck in this isekai world where it's like that, where if you die in the game, you die in real life type thing.
This is a portal.
Or it's almost like the opposite, where it's like another world has invaded ours and like turned it into that kind of setting.
Yeah, this is like almost reverse isekai type shit. But with your stat tracking, that to me is like kind of interesting. So can you go over the last part of your tenet again, Courtney? I kind of got like isekai tunnel vision, so like I want to hear what you were saying about that.
The second part was that each device has a randomized chance of granting its human magical powers.
Okay, so we're also getting into like an X-Men vibe where it's like, oh man, I've got like the power to cast fireball or something like that, right?
Well, that works with Daniel's like kind of tech as a conduit for magic type.
Yes, it absolutely does. Yeah, I totally dig that. Okay, interesting.
What's interesting is isekai genre seems to be an iteration of portal fantasy.
Yeah,
like Narnia and such.
That's kind of that. I would say that Narnia is like proto isekai. It is like not an isekai necessarily, but it is like definitely has like it is an ancestor to the modern isekai. You know what I mean?
It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, this is not like an ideal segue, but I think that like with isekai again, like modern isekais are very often based in like video games or very centered around video game culture in a lot of ways. So this kind of works because it doesn't at all. Let me be real. But let me explain this here. I was thinking when I saw copy pasting and like messing around with the world that it wasn't just that they created like copy pasting and stuff like that, that whatever happened to the earth, like they essentially took all of the cities in the world and took them and jumbled them up. Because in my mind, I'm thinking of when you're playing Civilization, especially like 5 or 6, where you can just have like every wonder in like 2 cities.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that there are basically now mega cities because they're like, oh, let's make all the cool things next to each other. So I want mega huge cities that have all been like condensed. So now you have like these metropolises where humanity, like these are bastions of humanity, right? But they've gotten all of the modern wonders all next to each other now. And like, I'm thinking there's probably no more than 6 to 8 of these cities. So imagine all the cool shit that we have in every city and every natural like wonder, put them all next to each other. And that is what I want for like the major regions in this world.
So there's some sort of intentionality behind this, it seems like.
Kind of, because what I was considering is like, okay, if they're just copy pasting, like specifically copy pasting, that implies intentionality, right? Like, so then in my mind, when I hear copy pasting, I'm thinking games, I'm thinking video games, and like, okay, we're basically Civ 6ing this shit now. And like mashing random until we hit something that we think is cool, but with the wonders already built. So it's like, okay, now the Eiffel Tower is next to the Colosseum, or like jutting up through the Colosseum or something like that. And these are all just mishmashes. And you know, some might make sense and some might not. But I think that the juxtaposition would be kind of interesting. And I also just think it'd be fun because it's like, they're also going to be bastions of culture. It's going to be like, yeah, look at the monuments that we made and look at like the cool shit that we're capable of. It's also a matter of hope through this like troubled time, right?
I like that idea, and like the images that it conjures up of, like you said, wonders being kind of mashed together, and it makes me picture like the alien or whatever they are, developers, if you will, like basically scanning over the earth and being like, oh, these things look cool. Why don't we, why'd they build them so far apart? We should just put them right together and make this like main area essentially.
Look, they've got so many pyramids, but different styles. They'd be way cooler if we just put them next to each other. So it's like Babylonian pyramid, Giza next to like Chichen Itza, and it's like all next to each other. It's like, see, that's way more aesthetic. You know?
Yeah. I love it.
I like the idea of intentionality because it also connects to the concept of a programmer behind this. Like when I was thinking of copy pasting, you know, like I thought of something being kind of random in the way it was written, but I like the idea of it being intentional because it seems like you're saying, they're reorganizing the world then in a way, or reprogramming the world.
Yeah,
exactly. By the way, now that my tenant's pretty much over, Courtney, your segue to your tenant, oh my God, it was godlike. It was so good. Thank you. That was an excellent segue to yours. Like, dear God, that's how they should work. Oh, fuck. I know that we mockingly called Chris the king of segues, but that's only because he was bad at them. That was a legit good segue.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Anyway,
I try.
Speaking of good segues, Daniel, we've got our first round of segues out of the way. Why don't you hit us with your second tenant? We can kind of figure out where to go from here.
Well, I originally had a different tenant, but I think I want to change that and make a new tenant now.
Hold on. So you have 3 tenants. You're now going to tell us all 3 tenants, and we're going to mash them all together. We're going to make that shit work.
Tenant I had was, generic enough that it seems to already be the case. So I want to go with this more fun tenant, which is more along the lines of technology and programming.
Okay.
What I want to say is that in the midst of this happening, there is essentially a Git repository of the original interface of the world, or the original configuration of the world that is mutable, but it's a way to get back to how things were. Like, it contains all the revisions that these aliens are making to the world, like a record of it.
I hate that. Actually, not conceptually. I think conceptually it's very interesting, but like, I want to smash that button immediately and be like, there is no going back, motherfuckers. Like, this is the world now. Like, this is where we are, but man, that is really interesting because you're essentially turning on God mode at that point, right? Like, you're playing SimCity, and this is when you like drop in a bunch of monsters and a bunch of floods and disasters all at once. I don't know if anyone else did this, but like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like that's what it reminds me of. And it's like, okay, undo and start over,
Yeah. For those who are unfamiliar with what a Git repository is imagine like a record of everything you do, and every change you make contains the state of the whole world. So if I removed a tree, it doesn't just contain that removal of a tree. It contains the whole world minus that tree. That's the state. So every change these aliens make, there's a branch with that whole state of the whole world in it. That's what I'm suggesting.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. So we're going back into infinite dimensions again. But like more technological, essentially.
Yeah, I guess like based on how this prompt describes making changes, it seems like if I wanted to go back to an earlier edit, I would have to like deploy whatever crazy 3D printing machinery exists that makes the changes, I guess,
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting.
I imagine that you could like use it just for certain sections of the world too. Like if you decide to flood a city for fun and then realize like, oh, that was probably a bad idea, then you can like just select that city in particular and undo it.
Yeah, then there's options to make features where you're working on one little piece. Technically, it's still the whole world, but for our purposes, it can certainly be restricted.
Yeah.
So does that mean that like, how well known is this thing then? Because if natural disaster strikes, then I imagine that it's like suddenly it behooves everyone who was affected by that disaster to go back and undo it, right?
I think only the aliens have this technology. Like, it's
Okay.
part of their copy pasting technology,
Mm-hmm.
because it leaves open the door to human magic programmers finding out about it and then maybe wanting to get access to it.
So you're thinking ahead to episode 2 where we need a main quest
Yes,
line. Okay,
exactly.
understood. Gotcha. Courtney, for episode 1, what are you thinking for your second tenet?
So it continues tying in with the like programming theme, sort of. Mine is that zones have been set up around the world for the aliens or whatever they are to play in with humans in those zones as NPCs or competitors, depending on the game type. Basically, like each zone could be a different type of game. For vibes, I'm thinking like Westworld, Predator, Battle Royale. Actually, a bit of Doom with those portals that he mentioned in the prompt.
So these monsters, like, they're not even threatening at this point, right? That's kind of the conceit of this.
I mean, I guess they could be, depending on which zone you end up in. Like, maybe there is some like Battle Royale against Demon Zone or something like that. Like, so maybe it's all dependent on luck and where you happen to be when the aliens decide to boot up a new game.
And I'm also very much getting vibes of Rising of the Shield Hero, where it's like basically it's kind of what you're describing, where okay, there's a time limit, and at the end of this time limit, we're going to send a bunch of monsters at this area or send them through this gate. And it's like kind of everyone's responsibility to make sure that they don't just fucking die. Right.
It's like a tower defense game, but actual.
Yeah, but with no towers. It's just people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
It also suggests experimentation on the part of the aliens. Like, what are they up to? It seems like they're using our world to run some sort of tests. I don't know.
Okay. What's really interesting, by the way, like, there are 3 very strong tenets in this particular prompt, and 2 of them are pretty much untouched, because my second tenet revolves around the different, or the kind of interplay between magic and technology. I wanted to make sure that one wasn't obviously way more powerful than the other. And so I put a hard cap on that. I am literally limiting it to like technology and magic had the same parity in terms of power. So a fireball exists, but it won't be more powerful than, say, like some kind of technology that already exists, like a grenade or a rocket launcher of something like that. And I want to equalize that in terms of availability as well. So you have access to shocking grasp, right? Your hand, zap, but then you also have the ability to use a fucking taser, zap, right? I want that to be equal. So they are, or actually, you know what? I'm recognizing that with this tenet, it makes them less exciting or less interesting, because it's like, if everything's special, nothing's special, right? So how would we reconcile with this kind of want and desire that I have and still maintain it being really interesting?
Well, we talked about, like, I mean, one of the tenets that our patron provided was that full magic doesn't mesh well with tech, and we talked potentially about like a chaos element that magic could bring. So what if it's like a randomized factor? Like, yes, most of the time your shocking grasp will just be taser level, but there are times you'll luck out and cause like some crazy chain lightning to occur.
That's really cool. I'm also thinking that you kind of have to you have to spec into one or the other. So it's like, if they don't mesh well, it's not like you can have an AK or a shotgun and also be tossing fireballs, right? Or like, maybe you can, but it's maybe that's what it is. Maybe you can have the parity between magic and technology, but it's like they kind of mute each other. So you can have both, but they're both less effective than if they were on their own. So you can go full tech, and like all of a sudden it's way more effective, way more powerful, or you can go full magic and it's way more powerful, way more effective. Or you can have a blend of the two, and like they're kind of like half as powerful as they might be, but you have the diversity and stuff like that of both available options.
To take a step back, I don't know that we know exactly what magic does or is.
Yes.
There's a suggestion that it has the power to rewrite the world in some way. Like, I guess the copy paste thing must be a function of that, right? So
Potentially.
so fundamentally, what is it? Because I totally, I like what you're saying. Like, technology's on par with it, right? That way we have a fighting chance. But like, what does it do that's fundamentally different? Like, so our technology makes use of the laws of physics as they are, right? And controls our environment. And that's basically what technology is. It's a way of controlling the environment. So what does magic do? I assume it would have to be opposite to that. To be interesting.
Potentially, but because of your first tenet, Daniel, we also have to recognize that we're using the same conduits as technology in a lot of these cases. So, like if we're using the internet, it has a power source that is essentially technologically based, but we're also talking about it also being magic. So where is the fracture point where it stops being tech and starts being magic? That's another question I think we have to think about as we consider this kind of broader question.
Yeah, and to pile more questions onto that, right? If we go back to our friend C.R. Rowanson, we have to answer the question, like, what does magic mean thematically? And so for me, traditionally, magic introduces a sense of wonder or the numinous, meaning it defies logic and it defies reason. That's what makes things magical. I think C.R. Rowanson would disagree with me because his opinion is more that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Rowanson, is that magic is in a sense kind of an advanced technology, I think, at the end of the day. But from a narrative point of view, how I would view it from fantasy is that usually magic has this numinous quality to it that defies reason. So going back to what you're saying, if technology is the interface for magic, I guess where the numinous can arise is in the effects. So while I might access the internet to activate my magic or to do something magical or with my technology, the effect should be something that's wonderment or that defies reason and breaks the rules. And maybe that's the leg up that magic has over, a technological weapon. So like, for example, then I don't think magic producing a fireball would be interesting. I think instead magic should do something that defies reason. Whereas, we launch a rocket, we expect an explosion, right?
Right. And I think that's where we can lean into Courtney's chaos factor a little bit more. I think Clark, were he here, and Clark, you got to come out. This is why we need you on the show sometimes, so you can be like, all right, here's how we fix this, fuckers. And that's when you tell us stuff. But I think here is where what we're looking at is the axis of reliability. And I think that's where we want technology is the lawful, or it's the axiomatic. Very reliable. Magic can then represent the chaos, the powers and the wonders of creation, but raw and unfiltered. And that's
like happy accidents, right?
Yeah. For example, but it also might explain why you can't filter it through technology, because technology represents the axiom, and you cannot filter chaos through law in this particular way, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we're using what we have at our disposal to interface with it, but if the effects are chaotic, which is what Courtney's suggesting, right? It kind of takes us back to all this fun AI I've been playing with, the art AI stuff that generates random images.
Holy shit. Yes.
Yeah,
maybe these aliens, the way they work is they're not looking for a specific outcome. They're looking for the serendipitous outcome, right? So they're willing to fuck shit up until they get there. And that's what's frightening to us.
Daniel, I think that I really think that you've hit the nail on the head with how magic should work. You're giving what you want to happen a series of prompts, and then magic just happens.
Yeah.
So it's like you're typing in prompts very quickly. It's like explosion, fiery,
nice.
Conical, and it's like but it's like maybe your mastery over magic becomes you get better at narrowing
refining,
the prompts and becoming really good at it. I think that's really fucking
that's
fun.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Oh my god! I think
and that would work with the programmers because they're realizing, there's a chaotic undercurrent to this, but we can guide it to some degree, and so that's how we're going to use the magic. We can't really directly control it, but we can prompt it.
Yes. Oh, that's brilliant. I think that's a really fun way that we can fuck with this. Oh my goodness.
Agreed. I love that.
Yeah.
And then there's a question of how are the aliens different? Do they interface very differently with it? I don't know.
That's what I was wondering. Is this magic essentially alien technology that we just don't fully
know.
because it's like
alien
or whatever.
And I keep thinking programmer, right? Like, because from what I'm seeing, there's no alien about this. It's like we're literally in a simulation right now. Like, and so we are living in a simulation, and they are just fucking around. This to me, there's nothing alien about what they're doing.
I'm picturing
these
it
are
as
simply bored humans.
I'm picturing it as like actually like some other entity has arrived at Earth and been like, this is a good testing ground for the stuff that I'm trying out. Let's like plant our roots here and like do some weird shit and see what happens.
Like physically programming us is what you're saying, right? Like it's not that we're a simulation. What you're saying is that they're using us as a means to program.
That's how I view it. Yeah, it's like they're sort of constructing this world for us so that they can observe us.
Like I think when you like, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you hear copy paste, you literally mean like we are reshaping a continent, physically reshaping it. It's just that the means of doing that is a form of programming.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm now kind of approaching this as these aliens swing by and they're using our planet essentially as like a seeded like base, right? And they're like, oh, this has a lot of the things that I'm interested in kind of starting with, but let's change this, and this. And then let's see what happens, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what if, I mean, there's a term for this in science fiction and sort of in science fact-ish called computronium, which is like a form of matter that is programmable. And so they're treating the world, the Earth, as computronium, you know, and they're programming with it. But there's ill effects because we live on the world.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, and we're like, hey, we're still here.
Right.
Maybe don't do this.
Yeah, and they're like, we don't really care very much, frankly.
Right. We are like little ants to them, basically.
Look, you built these pyramids so far away from each other, you can't even compare them. So I'm going to fix
wrong with you.
It makes no sense. Why would you do this?
Right. And episode 2, this gives us a lot of fuel because we also know how to program. Maybe the aliens don't understand that. Like, we're shitty at it, but we also are scrappy, you know? So there's your question.
And that's what I was kind of thinking about as like, if the magic is essentially how they do technology, if like they are used to thinking in these terms of like prompts and just sort of throwing out thoughts, but they've refined it so much that it is fully intentional on their end. But we're just getting started, so we're like, I don't know, like ice. So
like the reason that they're so powerful is that they've tapped into this magic. And they're like basically one with the Matrix. So they know how to completely replicate everything down to their whims. And because we're only just getting to it, we're like still trying to figure out the prompts. We're like, oh God, we don't know what this is.
They're very imaginative, right? Like, they think in metaphors, kind of like that Star Trek episode.
I knew you were going to bring up Star Trek. I knew it.
Like, okay, so like the episode where they talk in terms of mythologies. What is that? Forget the name of the episode. It's the famous
Arms
episode.
Wide Open when Tanaka meets whatever the fuck. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I have a freaking sweatshirt with it. It's like meant to be like a concert, but it's stupid. But anyway, like, maybe they think that way naturally, and that's why they're really good at these prompts. Whereas we think more literally. And so like when we start to create these prompts and interface with the technology, we're like, okay, I want, like you were saying, like I want a conical fireball that, you know, creates heat. But really what they should be saying is the result, like the interpretive effect, like I want total destruction and despair. And so the aliens already think about that way. And so when they prompt things, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
Right. So we're focusing on like the sort of real concrete stuff. They're focusing on the abstract, the emotional, the intangible. Okay.
We've got like basically AI generated magic, or like what we would like closely call, you know, like that's like how do we interpret it essentially. But I love what's going on right now.
What if the aliens are an AI from an alien civilization that like went rogue? Oh, wow. They like gained singularity.
They're trying to terraform.
Yeah.
Oh, degenerative themselves.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay. I'm loving this. This is like already so much fun. Oh my goodness.
Like that's why they think in generative terms. Like they don't have a concept of a fixed identity in the mathematical sense.
Yeah.
Like they just think in terms of like properties being added together, create outcomes, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, Courtney, when you were saying earlier, you know, like, oh, they're thinking of like just they're thinking of outcome rather, or maybe it was Daniel. I can't remember which. That's how bad my memory is. But it's like, you know, like we are thinking of like the direct. I imagine that some humans would think that, but because they're not specific enough when they say like inflict pain or like mass destruction, like that's where you get like monkey paw type shit where it's like, I want mass destruction, and like you focus that, but all of a sudden you're caught up in that because you are like, oh wait, I forgot about that. I forgot that I need to make sure that I can aim it, right? Because to them it's like, yeah, I can give you that. That's no problem. Massive earthquake underneath your feet or something,
like directly
like
under.
that.
A simple example of this is I was trying to generate with one of these AI platforms like a floating magical city, right? But it interpreted that as floating in water. So I had to say no ocean, no sea, no water in order to get what I wanted, to put it in the sky. So that's exactly what you're saying. Like, it's too vague and open to interpretation. And these aliens invite that because they don't care. You know?
Yeah.
Right, because it's like, you should know better how to use this already.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost like interacting with a genie. Like, you have to be super, super specific or they're gonna dick you over, basically.
Do whatever they want.
On the flip side, it's also like, oh, look at the children like flailing around trying to use something they shouldn't, right? It's like that's how I imagine the AI would approach humans using it. It's like, you shouldn't be using this, and it's obvious why you shouldn't. Look what you just did to that city, you know, like that type of thing.
Yeah.
All right. I have a bunch of questions about this setting already. We've nailed our tenets. I'm very excited already, but we have, again, this is something that I find really intriguing, is that there are two tenets that are essentially untouched here. And I think that we need to address them before we continue on, because we haven't talked about monsters / beasts or the portals that they come out of. That's one tenet in and of its own. And we haven't talked about the brand new swaths of terrain copy pasted at random across the planet. So like, I mean, like we've vaguely touched upon that, and we vaguely touched upon the monsters, but I feel like we really, because I don't feel like those are going to be brought up enough in factions that I feel comfortable leaving it to next episode. I feel like we need to address those two things now to really make sure that we flesh that shit out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I had brought up like the potential for like portals and monsters in like my sort of
zones,
play
right?
zones.
Yeah.
Like if there's like a Doom type game where like demons are bursting out of portals and stuff. And I think there's also potential now for humans to open portals. Like if they were to see a portal open and be like, oh, I could do that too, since I have this magic power, and it probably just horribly backfires. But I could see that going in a lot of different directions.
Right. What I would like to do, and you're right, Courtney, you did mention that, but I want to make sure that we get real specific and get into that nitty gritty. I want to roll around in the mud and make sure that we know what we're doing here with those two tenets, because they deserve our attention.
I also think there's a, like, we're going to fall into the trap of rendering beasts and monsters that are what we imagine traditionally will be beasts and monsters, right? The tenet says there are portals leading to another dimension from which all manner of beasts and monsters can come through. I would love it if we can interpret beasts and monsters in a way that's unexpected. And I don't know, like, for example, a way you could do that is, instead of them being literal monsters and creatures, they could be nightmares. They could be fears.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would be interesting if the way these other, maybe because of the replication that's going on, the way that these aliens rewrite reality creates tears in the fabric of reality and lets these things through. And they're used to that, but it ravages, you know, our experience. And maybe those monsters and beasts are not what we typically understand to be monsters and beasts.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
So you're looking to hold on to the monstrous aspect. Is that what I'm hearing?
The monstrous part. And it would make sense because the aliens think, as we've established, in an interpretive way.
Can I subvert it just a little bit more?
Absolutely.
Can I make it so like the monsters and beasts that come out of this are not adversarial or antagonistic at all? Like,
sure.
I'm thinking that these things that are coming out are like actively seeking alliances. They're like, I'm thinking like they're bartenders. Like it's Deep Space Nine and the Ferengi are just hanging about and like doing cool shit, right? Like I think that'd be a much more interesting and fun way to kind of approach what we're dealing with. And obviously there's going to be like, just like there's humans who are dicks, there's going to be monsters who are dicks. But like, I love the idea that like, oh yeah, that's Gleepschmop, and like, yeah, I know that he has like 7 mouths and he looks horrifying, but you know, he and I play cribbage on Wednesdays, and he's a really nice thing, you know? Like that's the kind of like feeling that I evoke, where you get the monstrous, where they look horrifying, but maybe there's some kind of congeniality that we can form, some camaraderie there.
You can play with the word monstrous too. Like, what does monstrous mean from the perspective of the aliens? My thought is that the very literal would be monstrous to them, the very fixed. Whereas to us, what we find monstrous, if we look at an AI generated image and we consider it monstrous, it usually has like 17 arms and eyeballs in the wrong place and tentacles, because it's very vague and unusual. So maybe the monstrous then, from the two perspectives, has some weird point of view. So I don't know if maybe the monsters, are these monsters from the perspective of us, or are they monsters from the perspective of the aliens? That's the question too.
True.
Or both.
Both, all of the above, I think.
Yeah, I think all of the above, yeah.
So then are these things like they come out and, you know, like, are they of the same reality, or are they from different realities?
I love the idea that we're kind of playing close to the edge of the mundane, where it's like, this is, you know, like we opened the gate to the 8th dimension, and it's actually, they're just kind of like regular, like kind of folks. Like, I love that subversion where it's like, every time you see a gate open, it's like some like, oh, like it's some Cthulhuoid, Lovecraftian, you know, monstrous thing. But like, I'm so much more interested in the idea of like trying to get to know those things, and like, and I mean that on like a more personal level. I love the idea of creating like bonds with those monstrous things in general. I think that's way more fun and interesting.
So is there power then to fix reality in a way that frightens the aliens? Like, I think that would be more frightening, because it also prevents us from programming as humans. Like, if a monster comes forth, whatever it is, it can like prevent the magic from happening, because it has a literal effect on the world.
So
I don't know.
I was thinking, like, what if these portals kind of harken back to previous worlds that the AI alien things had been on and had beta tested, essentially.
We're definitely on the same wavelength here, Courtney. I was going to say the same thing.
So it could be that the beings that are coming through like have a better sense of how to deal with their magic and like how to handle them as like an adversary.
Oh, so
lost
we might
branches.
we might even look at them as like archmages, because they know more about magic or how to deal with it. And they're like, we just have a lot of experience. Like, we lost maybe they're pilgrims from lost worlds, or like the burning vestiges.
They're stashed branches. Branches. And the concept of a stash branch or stash is like when you go to make a change or branch off to make new changes, you've made a bunch of changes and you haven't saved them yet. So you stash those changes someplace else to come back to later. But sometimes you never do. So they're just sitting in the repository with no history, right? And then they come forth at some point later.
They're like favorite toys from other branches. That's it. It's like these AI things like, I really liked him. I don't want him to die with this world. Let me just move him to this new world over here. And then you're given a second chance, right? And they're survivors, and there's this like wonderful panoply.
Kind of like genies then, in their own respect.
How do you figure they're genies?
So like, because you were saying they have like magical understanding of the way the world is reshaped. Like, and genies get bottled up, and they can grant certain wishes, and they're pernicious in their own way, you know?
Right, but these things wouldn't necessarily be pernicious. These would just be I see them more as survivors, and they know magic only because this kind of scourge that's on our planet has already been previously afflicted on their planet. You know what I mean?
Oh, I totally agree. Because I think like when I say pernicious, I mean like they're pernicious because they have to survive and they have to outwit people who are really greedy. Because if you think of a genie, like, they're not evil on purpose. They're enslaved to perform the whims of other idiots who summon them. Well, so over time, they're like, well, fuck you. Fine, I'll do this sort of the way you want. You know, like, they have no choice.
Well, that's why there's a range of jinn in like traditional mythology. Right. There's like Afridi and Nereid, I think, is one of them. Or no, that's the...
Because they have different attitudes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I think that like in that way, we would be opening up portals to genie realms in that.
Exactly.
There would be like different attitudes.
Yeah, like some might be super friendly, some might be total assholes.
Yeah, it's almost like the differing ways that people can react to trauma. Like these creatures or entities have reacted in different ways to what they've experienced. And in some cases, maybe, they've like gone through it well. They've sort of kept like who they are. And other times, maybe they've sort of been consumed by this magic. And like Daniel, you mentioned before, maybe what if it's like nightmares coming through? Like what if that is, an entity that had been consumed by the magic and had like been literally converted into nightmares because of it.
I'm also thinking of like a survivor who's like, I saw the end of my world and I saw it coming, and frankly, like it's our own fault. There's all sorts of really fascinating types of like mindsets and psychological profiles that you can create based on this concept. And based on the idea of a second chance, or even a third or fourth or fifth chance for some of these things, because we don't know how long or how far back that chain goes for them.
Yeah, like accelerationists who are like, let's just fucking get it over with. Like,
we're going to find the perfect one eventually, boys. Let's go. Yeah. Oh, that'd be good. That's really fucking fascinating. I love that. Okay. We've got to get down into the terrain. Literally, we've got to get down into the mud because we've got to figure out this terrain bit. How do we want to make this terrain interesting? How do we want to make this terrain unique? And what do we want to do with it? Because it's a tenet. It has to be important to the world, obviously. How is it important to this world besides the fact that it's just copy pasted and like now is where like the Midwest or some bumfuck nowhere place is elsewhere, right? Like, okay, bam, we plop down this thing. What's different, interesting, and new about it?
Well, it does say never before seen.
Right.
Spots of terrain. So like what
by us, I think, is the kind of conceit, right?
So I'm picturing kind of similar to how these entities are coming through from previous worlds. What if they're also taking terrain that they liked from previous worlds and slapping it down? Or like doing that sort of AI generated, like we're going to smash together a bunch of terms from our previous worlds to see what happens here.
And then that's when you get geometry that's like seriously fucked up, or like mountains that defy physics and stuff like that. Yeah. I really love that. I think the idea that you're creating artifacts from other branches, other worlds is really also really fun. I'm really loving how all this is coming together. This is great.
And it lends itself back to the serendipitous effect of rendering like AI art that we were talking about earlier. Like the sense of the wonder and mysterious occurs because of the collision of random prompts that you didn't expect. So the aliens bring from other renditions, other edits they've made to other worlds, unexpected things that we haven't seen because they're from other worlds.
Yeah. And what we can also do, tying it back to my original tenet, they've kind of already done that, right? Where it's like, imagine, okay, artwork or landscape with Eiffel Tower / Colosseum / Babylonian temple. But like, we're talking with prompts that we're not able to conceive of, with monuments that we don't know.
5-dimensional tesseract with a blurb attached to a Fisserdag. And then you're like, okay, well, and I don't know what any of those are.
Right. and so you see like, and maybe even one of these pilgrims from the monsters from the leftover. It's like, hey, I remember that. That was my my home world's.
That was my blurb.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so it's like, that'd be really cool. What you're also doing with that, because we're creating these weird AI generated monument valleys, sometimes literally, is you're creating excellent adventure sites with that, because they're alien and unknown, and they're literally alien,
Yeah. And that could be the zones that are where my games take place.
Or like instances, right? Yeah. Or the dungeons and stuff like that. That would be really, really fun as well.
And maybe that's also why they moved all the monuments that they liked into specific areas, because they wanted like a canvas to work with that didn't have all this cool stuff on it.
Or what they're really doing is just preparing for when this world fails. They're gathering up all their favorite things so they can quickly save it in one chunk.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Hear me out here. Hear me out. What about these dungeons? They are literally generated on the fly, just like procedural games and procedural dungeons. So when you enter a particular landscape or monument, the layout's going to change every single time.
That's cool.
When you say dungeons, you mean these randomly copied landscape?
Yeah, well, so here's what I'm thinking is that these copy pasted areas might not be mappable, right? Because every time you walk into them or every time like you're experiencing them, it's procedurally generated. So you cannot like that monument, or maybe it's just relegated to certain zones, like kind of like the instances that we were talking about. So the landscape doesn't change, but as soon as you walk into this dungeon, as soon as you walk into this monument, as soon as you walk into this Colosseum, that layout changes every time you walk into it. And it like there's something weird about how it warps around your perception.
Yeah, or it's like how with AI art, you like re-render the same version of something multiple times until you get the thing that you want. So maybe that's what the AI aliens are doing. Like they kind of keep seeing the spot and it's like, it's not quite perfect yet. So they hit refresh and if somebody's inside, they're like, fuck, what's going on?
With a new keyword added. It's like, I don't remember that thing being here last time. Like, that's really cool.
Like, wait, there's lava now? What?
I like that explanation. Yeah. Because that makes more sense of it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really fucking fun. That's dope. It's like, I loved this place right up until they added the giant monument of the dick statue. Like, I really think it's just kind of tasteless now, frankly.
Takes away from the whole experience.
One thing we need overall to add to this is a reason why they've chosen a place with life and intelligence to do their edits to. Because you can go to like Neptune and do this and there's nobody there to be concerned. So I wonder if something about consciousness or intelligence plays a role.
That's what I was thinking as you were saying that, Daniel, is that they have the modality, or that's not the word I'm looking for. I'm just thinking that they need the fuel, right? Like they can go to these, and to them, consciousness or life, conscious life specifically, is fuel. And without, if you go to a Mars or if you go to a Jupiter, there's no conscious life, so there's no fuel for them. They're attracted to these sources of consciousness where they can then be like, okay, now we can kind of do what we need to do.
Right.
Yeah. Like they can replicate anything in the universe except for the randomness of how conscious beings interact and react to things.
Yes, I like that a lot. Which would explain why they're also trying to usher them through the different portals and save them, essentially, because like this is a very rare resource and we don't want to waste it. Right. Let's kind of keep pushing them through these portals continuously.
Right.
Yeah. Whew. Okay. I feel like we're at a good place to do a recap of our tenets. I think we've fucking nailed every single one, but let's make sure by going back. Daniel, you started us off today. What was your first tenet?
The magic of the setting is tapped into via technology, like through the internet. I
feel like we've really developed that well. It's expanded and it's become really interesting.
Oh yeah.
Courtney, your first tenet.
Humans have been implanted with devices that allow for like tracking stats and essentially, and each device has a randomized chance of granting its human magic powers.
I feel like that's
really dealt with that.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely something that we can dig into a little bit more. I feel like the more that we talk about this is definitely granted by the AI, or maybe these are just magic items that you find through kind of going through the instances, as we keep calling them.
Like you're an adventurer gathering loot, basically, and this is like an artifact.
We're baking in the desire to adventure.
I feel like it's something we built to put into ourselves. I think it's something we built to put into ourselves because if consciousness is a factor here and how this works, maybe we need to like tap into like our pineal gland or whatever in order to use to truly interface with this technology. And I wonder if the thing you're talking about is like the device you have to have, and maybe it doesn't work on everybody. Like you're saying, like sometimes you're granted the powers and sometimes maybe it kills you.
Yeah. Like it's some sort of alien thing
technology.
That humans have like tweaked a bit to make function in us, but like you said, it doesn't always work.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And but what I do like about this is that what we're talking about here feels like it's a baked in hook to go adventuring.
Yeah, I mean it's basically like a lit RPG kind of thing, or like
horrible
Ready Player One-ish, like that sort of.
Don't you evoke that name in my fucking dude. This is a cool place, god damn it.
I know. It's like Ready Player One if that was good. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't trash.
If it wasn't complete garbage fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think that we do need to spend a little bit of time like with this. Are these things, are these implants, are they inheritable? Can you pick them up and use them as equipment? Or is it something that I implant this once and it's done? It's, as Daniel said, it's like I figure out if I get to be an X-Man or not, or I die, right?
I'm picturing it as something that's like implanted in you, but I imagine if you die, there's nothing stopping somebody else from trying to go for yours.
Yeah. I like the latter.
And then that's where a black market kind of kicks in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like that it's dangerous, and that way not everyone can be these kind of hackers and create some limitations.
Yeah.
And then we can create overload. So it's like, you know, like, so you can't just become a Christmas tree of like different upgrades and stuff like that.
Just die.
It's like there has to be a max limit, because otherwise what's to prevent one really what's to prevent Elon Musk from gathering all of the cool like tech in the world and put it in? I know, that's why I bring it up specifically, because you know he would.
He'd be out there murdering people, sticking these things into himself. Yeah.
Exactly.
Maybe these devices are curation. So like if there's like, and then going back to the AR example, there's like a massive super data set that the aliens use that's incomprehensibly large. And we've taken chunks of it and we've made sub data sets, and our devices tie to those data sets in terms of like rendering stuff in the world. And so like we, you know, when you plug one into yourself, you have access to a certain data set of reality, right?
Yeah. That I was gonna think that exactly, Daniel. I was thinking that do you remember our high fantasy game that we played in City of Mists?
Which one?
The one that we just played before I left.
Oh yeah, that one.
Okay. Do you remember how I had your character pick I am the bearer of the word blank?
Yeah, like a particular idea, right?
Right. Imagine that. Imagine that these like implants are like data sets that focus around a specific word or set of words.
It's like a skill tree or class that you're being assigned.
Yeah. But like I am the user of the word sentinel. I am the user of the word bastion. I am the user of the word fang. And it's like all of a sudden you like gain a weird skill set or like this kind of like ideal that you can use this magic faster as long as it's focused around that particular word or set of words.
So your prompts, have to interface, because the data you have to work with is like all rage related stuff. So you have to construct prompts that work with that.
I think that adding that kind of that kind of conceit would force unique interactions, and it would also force clever uses of the words and the data sets that you'd acquire.
Yeah, because you want to work with other people who have them to expand your ability to manipulate the whole of reality.
Yeah, or create dope combos, right? Okay.
I love that.
Yeah, no, this is really cool. I love that this is kind of coming together.
That said, I do now like the idea that maybe there is a threat of greed. Like maybe having a couple or a bunch in you won't necessarily kill you, but there is a risk that it's going to fry you. So people do take that risk and try to become like way more powerful than they should be.
I am the user of the word greed. Yeah, absolutely. But in all seriousness, I do appreciate that. Like, I think that there is something to be said where we need to make sure that it doesn't become Christmas tree-like, you know, where...
Yeah. I mean, I think that just leaves the door open for like villains and that sort of conflict of like people trying to hoard their power.
Yeah.
Especially if we set this in a time where it's like there hasn't been enough time to consolidate that power yet. Like we're still... Or the humans are still in the discovery phase of how all of this works.
Yeah.
So there's still a deep mystery that we can kind of uncover. Oh boy, this is super fun. I'm really digging this. My first tenet was the AI generated things have basically plucked all of the best parts of all of the world as we have it, and they have combined them into massive megacities. We've talked about this multiple times. I think it ties in thematically with kind of the world that we're creating. I feel like that tenet is well and truly integrated. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I think so.
Awesome. Okay. Back to Daniel. Daniel, your second tenet, sir. The fun one that you came up with.
My second tenet is that the AI have an underlying record of all their changes that is immutable.
And I feel like we've kind of done that by introducing the other worlds. Is that how we've integrated that?
Yeah, and I think that can be used later for the factions because it can be exploited.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Okay. Is there anything, are there any other questions or any other ways that we want to try and integrate this tenet?
I think it prevents vulnerabilities for the aliens because there's a single source of truth, and it's supposedly immutable or incorruptible. That means we have to corrupt it. Narratively.
Yeah.
It does suggest a source code, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. It becomes a source code. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah. I mean, it is, again, Daniel setting us up for episode 2. Much appreciated, sir.
Nicely done.
Yep. And Courtney, your second tenet?
Mine was about the zones or instances that have been set up around the world for these alien AI things to play in. And humans in those zones would be like the NPCs or competitors, depending on what kind of game it is. Then each area could be a different game type, like Doom or a battle royale or what have you, Predator.
I think that we've done a fairly decent job by introducing the idea of the instances, when we kind of made sure that we got the zones in correctly and having them be fragments of the previous realities. I feel like that's pretty well integrated. The different genres, though, the different game types, I think is that something that we want to drill down on, or is that something that we want to yeah, we have it originally, but we don't what are we thinking about that?
I don't know. I was thinking that one option for next time is that instead of a faction, we each create one of these instances, but I also don't want to shoehorn us into that.
Oh, that might be interesting because as it is right now, right? Creating instances, I don't think we've ever really done location creation outside of spending entire episodes towards it. And that was way back when we were still doing Land of a Thousand Gods, right? Daniel, how do you feel about this?
I mean, I'm open to either of them, so.
God, you and your slutty opinions, Daniel. I'm pro slut. You know this.
But sometimes I'm willing to see where it goes.
Spoken like a true slut, by the way. Okay. You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to roll a die and then we're going to figure that out. How about that?
There you go.
Sounds
That's
good.
Fine.
Let's do it.
All right. Daniel, I'm going to make you choose. Do you want odds or even to represent the faction?
Even.
All right. So if I roll even on this D20, then we're going to come back with factions. If it's odd, we're going to be doing Courtney's idea where we create an instance, which also includes genre. So let's see what we got. Well, I'm glad I didn't roll that in a real game because that's a nat 1, which means that next episode we're going to be rolling with an instance, which I think is very exciting. Yeah.
All right.
Let's see. Yeah. Oh, my second tenet. My second tenet was that kind of delineation between magic and technology. And I think we had a really great conversation about how that kind of splinters. I feel like that's well integrated. Is there anything else that we kind of needed to approach about that? Or I think that's pretty much done and dusted.
I mean, if you're comfortable with it, I think we're good.
Yeah, I feel like we've covered that pretty well.
Okay. All right. So we've gotten the recap done out of the way. Now, with our world semi-formed, we need to roll some dice and add a little more chaos. So what do we got here? Let's see what our twist is going to be for this world. Our twist for next episode. Now add in some undead. All right.
Okay.
That sounds, yeah.
Wow.
That's going to be an interesting one, I think. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do some, yeah. Okay. You know what? No. This is for next episode. Next episode. Okay. Again, huge thank you to our new patron, Alex, for this brand new prompt. This is the first prompt that they've ever submitted. So a huge thank you for that. If you're not already part of our Discord, I don't think you are. Come and let us know how it is. If you wanted to build a world just like Alex, or have us build your world just like Alex suggested, you can go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, click on the link, follow the instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we'll be building your world. If you want to come and follow us on social media, we're on Twitter at Let's Worldbuild. And if you want to come chat about this particular episode or anything in general, you can go to our Discord with a link for that in the description. And of course, if you're feeling particularly generous, you can always go to our Patreon and give us money, where you can get sweet, sweet patron-only episodes, early episodes, a private Discord with us that we do. There's all sorts of cool stuff. Go to our Patreon, give us money if you can, or if you feel like it. That's it. That's pretty much it. With all that shilling out of the way, guess what? That's going to end this episode of World Build with us. Remember that we love you very much, and we're going to get through this together. Until next week.